بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you once again for joining us in this live show on spiritual solitude on the theme of coping in difficult times. Alhamdulillah, we have had our many distinguished guests who are experts in their fields discussing various topics related to coping in difficult times. We've started from the management of loss and grief to power of hope. And of course, we discussed Islam and mental health. And last week we were discussing the issue of depression and how to manage the depression that we may be suffering or others to support them. And really, it brings us down to a very important topic in this whole theme, which is really to do with our well-being. Feelings of well-being are fundamental to the overall health of an individual, enabling them to successfully overcome difficulties and achieve what they want out of life. What does Islam say about well-being? Does the prophetic teaching or the Quranic teachings, for that matter, have any say on this idea of well-being? Alhamdulillah, I have with me Sister Farhana Malik. Sister Farhana Malik is a psychology graduate from Sussex University and works as an assistant psychologist in an patient psychiatric hospital in the NHS. So alhamdulillah, she's been in the front line. And she's actively involved in running psychological groups like mindfulness, well-being, recovery, and self-compassion, as well as working with peer support workers to run co-produced training workshops for staff and the community. She's very much involved with an organization I'll ask her to speak more about, because it's very important that we get to know such organizations, which is to do with creating a space for Muslims to get help for mental health. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass over to Sister Farhana Malik to tell us about well-being, and is there an Islamic way to well-being?
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Hussein. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Farhana Malik. As the brother said, I have had experience within the psychological field. Currently, I'm a trainee psychological wellbeing practitioner working in a primary care mental health service called IAPT. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I can tell you more about my volunteering role in Inspirited Minds, inshallah. Okay. Can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put it on full screen, inshallah. Okay, so today I'll be talking about well-being from an Islamic perspective. But first, I want to talk about Inspirited Minds. So Inspirited Minds is an Islamic volunteer-led mental health charity based in London. And it was founded in 2014, where three founders wanted to find out mental health services and the access from the Muslim community. So they carried out some research, and they found out that Muslims found it really difficult to seek help. So they set up Inspirited Minds as a platform to raise awareness about mental health in the Muslim community, combat and reduce stigma, and provide professional, non-judgmental, confidential support to those with mental health difficulties. Now, with Inspirited Minds, our values are much in line with what our Prophet ﷺ was like. So Islamic, compassionate, ambitious, respect, and excellence. And as an acronym, it stands for I care. And I just wanted to share a few initiatives that we have developed over the last 6 years, mashallah. And our team is growing every time, alhamdulillah. So this initiative is called Ask I Am. It's a bit like the agony aunt side to it. So it's where individuals from the Muslim community can ask an anonymous question about anything that they're suffering in terms of related to their mental health, and they can just go on here and anonymously ask. Our support team, who have qualified staff in there, as well as Islamic scholars, respond back through a written form, and it's published in our newsletter, which is sent out each week. We've got another initiative called Look After Yourself. Now, in our day and age, and it's not just restricted to only Muslims, everyone does this. When we find someone who is struggling with any type of difficulty, we give them advice on how to look after themselves, but we don't kind of give that advice to ourselves. So this initiative is to share and write a message to yourself. What would you say to yourself when you're going through difficulties, when you're feeling burnt out or stressed? So this message is to yourself, and again, this is published in our newsletter at least once a month, where everyone else would be able to read what you would share with yourself. And also it's a nice reminder to kind of read and remind yourself how you would look after yourself when you're going through a difficult time. Sorry, I'm going backwards. And some of the other things that we do in Spirited Minds is raise awareness. So through workshops and trainings, I'm the outreach manager in Spirited Minds. So what my team does is we train imams, community leaders, teachers, parents, students about mental health and how it's linked in with Islam. A lot of people don't think this is linked in. They probably think physical health is more important than mental health, but I'll go into that in a short while. We also run events about creativity and Islam and mental health, because we know that creativity is something that is a coping strategy. We undertake research, we write articles on our website, and we share it on our newsletter. Social media, we're very active on it, alhamdulillah. We do podcasts, so we invite qualified guests to talk about mental health and Islam. We also provide resources. So a couple of years ago, we developed a mental health khutbah for imams to talk about mental health during Jum'ah. And we also got some resources for helping someone with mental health difficulties. And on top of that, we offer support such as listening support. So an online support where you can talk to someone, well, a support worker in our team, and get some support around mental health, and also counseling, which can be either through telephone, Skype, or in-person counseling. And that ranges from 10 to 20 pounds. And with the donations we get, for those who suffer, those who are struggling financially, at times we also provide that support financially. So I just wanted to let you know that we have support available that you can access. So we're going to move on to the main part of talk. So the first thing that we need to cover is, what is mental health? Now, mental health is a state of well-being where an individual recognizes their own abilities and is able to cope with normal stresses of life, work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their community. Now, this is a definition by the World Health Organization. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are aware of the World Health Organization now due to coronavirus. So this is their definition about mental health. And we've got an added element as Muslims and in Islam, which is, you know, with every difficulty, every calamity that we go through, it's a test. It's a test from Allah, and we use Islamic practices in addition to other treatment, other interventions to help cope with mental health difficulties. Now, another thing to mention about mental health in Islam is that a lot of people probably don't think that Islam and mental health are linked together, but we have a rich history of Islamic psychology, and there's a science called Ilmul Nafs, which is the study of the self. Again, it's about the study of the mind, the self, and the soul, which a lot of our prominent, Muslim scholars had studied in detail. So I wanted to point that out first in terms of how mental health is linked in with Islam. We have a lot of rich history in terms of understanding ourselves more. This is a diagram about treating mental distress. Now, in the West, they only focus on the first three elements, so psychological, biological, and social. But as Muslims and as people who have faith, they also we also have the added element of spirituality, which unfortunately isn't included as much in the Western therapy. So in terms of treatment, you have to think about these four different elements to find out how you can treat your difficulties holistically. So biologically, there may be some physical ailments that you have, and there's remedies such as regular exercise, medicine, diet. Psychological ailments, such as how you think about certain things. You know, there's coping skills that you can learn, social skills, self-esteem, learning how to build that self-esteem and confidence up. The social element involves your network, your support network. So how you can use them to help you manage your mental health better, and also spirituality. So connecting with Allah, and using the different Islamic practices that we have that helps us to get closer to Allah. And in relation to ilmul nafs, so the study of the soul, the purpose and the purpose of that is to get closer to Allah. We want to get in touch with our fitrah. And again, it's to believe in one God, Allah. And the way we get closer is to engage in Islamic practices as well as taking care of ourselves. And there is a famous hadith that mentions that our body has a right over us. Now, it doesn't only mean physical health only, it also means mental health. And we know that in a lot of research studies as well, our mental health, our psychological health has an impact on our physical health and vice versa. So again, there's a lot of wisdom in our religion, in our faith, where it emphasizes them two together and how we need to cultivate and nurture both of them. Sorry, I keep going back. So the 5 steps of well-being is some steps that the NHS recommend and that have been researched by the New Economics Foundation. And they pointed out that there's 5 steps to maintain your well-being. Now, these 5 steps are connect with others, be active, take notice, learn, and give. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, so how is this linked to Islam? Like, it's been researched in the West. How can it be linked in with Islam? And I'm going to tell you this now. It is very much linked in with Islam. Within the Sunnah, within the Quran, there is a lot of emphasis of connecting with others, being active, taking notice, learning, and giving. So I'm going to go through one of them each at a time. So connecting with others is important because the Prophet ﷺ the Prophet ﷺ talked about the importance of having good friends and how they influence our iman greatly and how they make an impact on our behavior. He likened friends to either a blacksmith or a perfume seller. One leaves behind dirty marks and the other leaves behind a nice scent, or sells you perfume, so there is benefit in meeting them. So the importance of these individuals that you connect with is that they help you to remind you of Allah. And when you slip up, they will remind you of when you've slipped up and how you can manage that and what steps you need to take to get closer to Allah. There are so many different ways you can connect. So one of the ways you can connect is connecting for a greater purpose than your well-being. And we know that that greater purpose is to seek the pleasure of Allah. And it's quite hard in these times that we're living in, where Islam is seen as violent, as society's enemy. It's emphasized that we should leave our Muslim goodness behind everywhere we go. And Ali radiallahu anhu made the statement, a flower that gives its fragrance even to the hand that crushed it. So again, it emphasizes to leave the Muslim goodness behind us, regardless of how we're being treated in certain situations. Other ways you can connect is sparking a new conversation with others, someone that you haven't met, someone that you haven't stayed in contact with regularly. It could be a teacher. It's about radiating that goodness. And in the technical age that we live in, during coronavirus, we're really engaged with technology and our mobile phones. And it's important to sometimes put that phone away and connect with others. Perhaps don't send a message to your friend and ask to meet up with them face to face. Obviously, during the current circumstance, during coronavirus, take the steps to socially distance yourself as well. Other ways which would particularly be applicable for introverts is connecting with things that you enjoy doing. So like your book or art or something that you're creative with, and share that with others from your network. Share a book that you read together, share a poem, share notes together. So there are so many different ways you can connect. And an added point in relation to this, which I'm going to refer to, an added point in connecting with others also involves connecting with the creation of Allah. So the Prophet ﷺ and Prophet Yahya were nature guys. They loved animals. So we consider it as a prophetic practice to be connected with nature as well. So maybe when you have some free time, you could take your shoes off and walk on grass, perhaps, feeling connected with nature. Now, the second step is being active. Now, during coronavirus, not many people have been active, and I need to emphasize this as well, because being active really helps with how we feel about ourselves. There's a lot of research that has shown that when you are physically active, you are less likely to feel depressed and anxious or stressed. And um, being physically active releases the good feeling hormone. So it's really important to be active. Now, I'm going to link this back in with the Sunnah as well. So the Prophet ﷺ was physically fit with a simple diet and plenty of physical exercise. He used to walk to places where he could have easily ridden a donkey. And in Tirmidhi, his walk was described as almost a jogging pace, where his strongest of companions could not keep up with him. So again, it emphasizes that physical activity is really important. Sunnah sports also involve martial arts, wrestling. Now, wrestling nowadays looks like it's not the wrestling that was there back in the day. The wrestling back in the day during the Prophet ﷺ's time was more like martial arts, so grappling movements. Other sports that are linked in with the hadith are encouraging swimming, archery, and horseback riding. And the benefits of these are phenomenal. They range from strengthening your muscles, posture stability, refining accuracy, concentration skills, promoting mental focus, and breathing control. And we know that breathing is something that is affected by our mental distress. So when we get stressed, our breathing gets affected. So it's important to kind of cultivate and nurture our breathing and taking notice of that, which I will go into in a sec. Now, there is a famous hadith, which I'd like to mention here as well, is take benefit of 5 before 5, your youth before your old age, your health before your sickness, your wealth before your poverty, your free time before your preoccupation, and your life before your death. Now, I'm mentioning this because it's important to take care of your mental health, and that's a part of your health before you become sick. And these 5 steps that I'm about to go into more detail emphasizes that these are the steps that would need to be followed or take advantage of in order to gain the most benefit out of it. So I know with exercise in the Muslim community particularly, and many other communities as well, exercise can be hard. We have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of duties, and taking an hour out seems really hard. Maybe not in coronavirus, maybe we have more time. At the same time, we need to have at least 30 minutes of exercise every day. It could be taking the stairs instead of the lift. It could be when you're driving your car to a certain destination, parking it a bit further so you walk a bit more. And you may power walk. You may want to not probably go outside because it's probably anxiety provoking, but do a workout at home using a YouTube video or a workout DVD. Get your family and friends involved. The Zoom videos or Microsoft Teams are being overly used right now. So take advantage of these times. And also, I know in London or cities, it's quite hard to go to parks or find like mountainous areas. Still go to these parks, still go outside and enjoy the nature. I know there's trees outside, there's animals, birds. There are so many things that Allah has gifted us that we can take notice in and, just embrace it when we're going out for walks and stuff. The second thing, or the third thing actually, is take notice. Now, being aware of what is taking place in the current moment can help with reaffirming our life priorities, self-understanding, and this can help with making positive changes. Be curious with what's around you. And when we're going through mental difficulties or stress, or if we're depressed or anxious, taking notice can be extremely, really hard. It's important to take that step back, give yourself time, being patient with yourself and forgiving yourself during those times, even if you can't do these activities yourself. So in these times, be more compassionate. Again, with taking notice, you could take notice in your dua. What are you exactly saying in your dua? And in relation to this, I wanted to point out khushu in salah as well. So in khushu, I know I haven't met a person who hasn't had 100% khushu throughout their salah. And it's understandable. It's very natural not to have khushu or concentration in salah. And in my salah course, my teacher said, one of the ways to improve your khushu is imagining that Allah is in front of you, imagining that He is here, present with you. And another thing that he said, my teacher said, was recite the surahs in Arabic and say it in English as well, so you understand what you're reciting. And that was really powerful in itself, because I actually feel what I am saying, and that's helped with my concentration in salah. So again, taking notice and slowing things down when you feel like everything around you is speeding up. Other ways to take notice is listening to the Quran, either through when you go out for a walk or even at home. Listen to virtuous surahs like Ar-Rahman, any other surahs that you feel brings you comfort, because we all know that Quran is shifa, is a healer. Taking different routes to work or school. People are probably going back into work, or probably trying to get into a routine. Take different routes in and out from your house. Changing your environment is really important for taking care of yourself. And it helps you to feel better, to feel like you're not stuck in the same place. I mentioned khushu, so tadabbur, reflection. Slow down your prayer, tafakkur as well. And one other skill in this element, the step, is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in relation to Islamic psychology, we know that in the Quran it mentions the heart a lot, and that's a really important component of a Muslim, because they need to nurture this organ, whether if it's a physical organ or a spiritual organ. And the reason why we need to nurture it is because it's linked in with our ruh, our soul. Now, the way the heart is impacted is through our environment and our body, and the way we like perceive the environment and our perceive the environment is through our 5 senses. So the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is basically our 5 senses. So you know, how many things can you taste? 2 things that you can smell, 3 things that you can touch, 4 things that you can hear, and 5 things that you can see. So those are the different elements that can help you take notice of the surroundings. Learn is the other step, and we know that in Islam it's important to seek knowledge and continue to seek knowledge. Now, I mentioned we've had prominent leaders in our history. We had Muslims who developed medicine, who developed optometry, who developed tools for hospitals. We've had Muslims who developed the first mental health hospital years and years ago, but not many people know about that. Now, they developed these because they were very curious. They wanted to learn more about the deen. They wanted to learn more about the dunya, and they've used those skills to benefit the ummah and the rest of the world as well. So again, it emphasizes that we have such a strong role in our learning. So, you know, we don't have to learn about Islam all the time. Learn about skills that would help the rest of the humanity. I mentioned as the first step, focus on the basics of Islam first. Now, a lot of people might feel a bit embarrassed not to go back to the basics of Islam, but there's no right or wrong way of doing stuff, and there's no right or wrong time of doing stuff as well. We can always learn from replenishing our understanding of Islam from the basics. And there's a lot of Muslims who have like started learning about Islam when they were at an old age. So there is no right or wrong time for learning about Islam or anything else, to be a matter of fact. We could learn from YouTube videos, webinars, study circles, learn about our religious history and arts, and learning about Islamic psychology back in the past and how mental health was so important. University was actually one of the first universities in the whole world was in Karawin in Morocco, founded by a woman. So a lot of people aren't aware of our Islamic history, our Muslim history, and it's so important to really enrich ourselves about this and learn about it and appreciate it. Islamic history of the self, ilmul nafs, and again, you know, you can learn in so many different ways. You can learn about so many different things: languages, cooking, knitting, writing. The world is your oyster. You can learn as far and wide as you want. And the last one is give. Now, again, giving doesn't necessarily mean zakah. I know this is our 4th pillar, and it can encapsulate so many things. Sadaqa is very important as well. So gifting without feeling like you have to, you're doing it out of your own compassion, by doing something for others. So it could look like a poem, giving gift to someone. Now, there's a famous hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, where if you give gifts, because it increases love between each other. And it's so that hadith really resonates with me a lot. giving away your artwork or anything else that you feel like might be might make the other person happy, or put a smile to their face. Feed the homeless, organize a fun trip with your family or your friends, help your parents out more in terms of around the house, your responsibilities, give food to your neighbors, donating old clothes, volunteering time. And it doesn't mean just volunteering within specific organizations. It could be picking up a litter from the street or something and putting it in the bin. You would still be rewarded for it. Smiling is another element of giving as well, which weighs heavy in terms of making other people happy, other people feel loved and being wanted as well. Kindness and compassion, there's no limits to that. Monetary as well, again, a lot of giving comes from money, donating money, saying thank you, sharing kind words as well. So giving it's limitless. You can give as much as you want, as little as you want. The reward will be immense, inshallah. So those are the 5 steps. Now, I wanted to leave this exercise here. We can't do an exercise at this moment, but I wanted to leave you guys with 5 sentences. And after the webinar, you can write it down. So these 5 sentences are: I connect by doing, I'm active by doing, I take notice by doing, I keep learning by, and I give by doing. So write a list down of what you do and assess yourself. Are you doing all of these things? And if you're not, schedule them in a balanced way in your weekly schedule, weekly diary, and then see how much you can do. It's not a race. It's not a race to do all of them in one go. Do as much as you can and know your limits as well, because it's really important to know how your limitations, so you don't stress yourself out. And at the end of the day, your body has a right over you. So if you feel like your limit is at a certain level, then that's okay. That's how much you can do. You can move the rest of the other things that you need to do another week or another day. Some other quotes from the Quran and Hadith. So stress, as well as other psychological difficulties, mental health difficulties, Allah does not burden a soul more than it can bear. Allah knows us better than our own mother. He knows our capacity, He knows our ability. So He wouldn't put us in a situation or a calamity or a difficulty if He did not know that we would be able to power through it. Gratitude. Our faith emphasizes being grateful, and as well as positive thinking as well. Our faith, Islam, emphasizes being hopeful, being positive. So Allah mentions, so do not become weak against your enemy, nor be sad, and you'll be superior in victory if you are indeed true believers. Now this was linked with the wars during that time, but I take being superior by being patient, by not being sad, by being hopeful and being positive, because at the end of the day, Allah rewards you for that, and persevering. And then the other quotes are, verily in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Remembering Allah, connecting with Him, maintaining your salah, maintaining that connection. Again, it took a long time for more Muslims or more individuals to accept Islam. It took years and years and years. And the Prophet ﷺ was so patient, mashallah. For us, we need to develop that patience and that resilience. And if we fall down, that's okay. Pick ourselves back up and we'll power through, inshallah, and Allah would reward us for it. And again, the last hadith, how wonderful is the affair of the believer, for there is good for him in every matter. And this is not the case with anyone except the believer. If he is happy, then he thanks Allah, and thus there is good for him. And if he is harmed, then he shows patience, and thus there is good for him. Now, a lot of the times we are told to be patient and to have sabr, but that doesn't mean being passive. It means taking active solutions. What are my solutions? What other treatments and interventions can I take advantage of? And the four circles that I showed you earlier, think about, can I take any biological related treatments? Do I need to take therapy, psychological therapy? Do I need to focus on a spiritual Islamic practice? Do I need support from a social support network, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your colleagues? Who can you take support from, and how can you support yourself? So it's not about just being passive, it's about being active in your role. Again, tying the camel is another hadith, and leaving your trust with Allah. So tying your camel is, what are you doing to help yourself first, and then trusting Allah. And the last 2 slides is about signposting. So I wanted to mention that there are services available for anyone who's suffering from mental health difficulties. Now, mental health difficulties doesn't mean you need to have a diagnosis or a mental health illness. Stress is considered as mental health. Anxiety, feeling low is considered as mental health. Now, the point at which you feel like it's affecting your functioning in your day-to-day life is a point in which you may want to consider seeking support. So your GP is one of your first point of contact. They would recommend you to talking therapies, and an alternative name is improving access to psychological therapies, IAPS. You can self-refer online as well in your local borough, and it's totally free. It's under the NHS. Mind is a mental health charity. I left the email address there, and they provide groups and also counseling as well, Inspirited Minds, and other types of therapy. So like homeotherapy, acupuncture, chiropractor, massage, hijama therapy, and aromatherapy. And if you feel like you are in an emergency or in a crisis state where you feel like you are at risk of harming yourself, or you feel like you're better off dead, again, this is an emergency and we have services which you can access, such as your GP booking an emergency appointment, going to A&E, calling 999 or 111 if you want to double check if you are in an emergency. We've also got crisis helpline numbers such as Samaritans, and we've also got the Muslim Youth Helpline, which operates specific times of the hours as well. And these are the resources that we reference a lot during our work. If you need me to send it over, I can also. I did say it was the last 2 slides, but I just wanted to just let you guys know about all the other services that we offer for Inspirited Minds. So again, if you want training or workshops to be delivered by us, please go onto our website. If you want to get involved and volunteer, a part of the give of the 5 steps of wellbeing, please get involved. And we've got a newsletter which you can sign up to as well. And I'm going to leave it open for Q&A.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for that. If you want to just stop sharing screen, inshallah, we can just move from there. Jazakallah khair. There's a lot there, and I really like this idea of the 5 steps. They're quite broad, and I think I was just thinking while you're going through this, and I know you were saying as well, is that obviously we're offering an Islamic perspective on this, but in terms of the broadness of the whole idea of well-being, we can dip into other sciences, we can dip into various methods that are out there, as long as it's journeying to that same goal, which is our mental health and our well-being.
Mm-hmm.
You want to just elaborate on that a little bit more about really just seeking out different ways that are out there in the kind of comprehensive meaning of this idea of well-being?
So in terms of seeking help in relation to maintaining one's well-being, yeah, I guess in relation to that, it's important to understand your physical body and how that can be impacted first. So by that I mean understanding how your body is impacted by it. So any physical sensations that you notice when you're feeling anxious, stressed, or low. A lot of the Muslim community express their mental health difficulties through physical symptoms. So if they get a headache, or if they get shoulder tension or hypertension. Now, in order for you to maintain your well-being and your physical well-being, it's important to identify when you're noticing these physical sensations. It may not be physical first, it may be psychological. So what are you thinking about? Are you noticing that you're getting more negative thoughts? So identification of these symptoms are important first before you start seeking that treatment, before you start seeking help. And again, it goes from identification and seeking support to be able to maintain your well-being. In terms of the treatment, the 4 circles that I mentioned earlier, those, I would say it's important to consider these 4 different elements in terms of helping yourself manage your well-being. So thinking about the biological aspects of it, and that what I meant by that is your physical body, how you notice any physical changes in your body. Do you need any medication to help maintain those physical difficulties? um, Exercise again improves your physical health as well as your mental health, your psychological well-being. So again, if you're thinking negatively, if you're feeling like you are not as skilled in a certain area, would you need to skill yourself up, such as assertiveness? You would be considering psychological therapy or an alternative therapy. Social skills as well, the social element of it. What kind of support do you have around you that you can seek, who you can seek support from? So your family members, your neighbors, your imam, your local mosque, your friends. And we know that most of the time we probably go to our friends first before anyone else, or the imam first, because they're more knowledgeable, they would know more. And again, the spiritual element of it, in terms of seeking support, is connecting with Allah as well. But these all one shouldn't be neglected more than the other. I hope I answered that question.
No, thank you very much for that. That's what I wanted to drive at in terms of the comprehensive nature of this, the whole idea of well-being. There isn't just one pot to dip into. It's a various things that we're trying to do in our daily, everyday life. I've got somebody who's saying some of these tips are unsafe. I'm not sure where that's from. We shouldn't be going around to others. Do you want to just clarify that you're not necessarily asking, obviously, if you are watching this while you are in lockdown or social distancing, what kinds of things can you do in order to connect with others right now? Bearing in mind, there may be some of our viewers, wherever they are, who have been asked to socially distance.
Yes, of course, definitely. In this time, in this current day, it wouldn't be safe to go out and meet your friends or particular individuals. You can meet at a socially distant level, so you can still go to the park and meet them. Of course, this is anxiety provoking in itself, because we don't know if coronavirus, who's got it. But it's important to follow the government guidelines and keep a safe level. There are so many different ways we can still connect. So like using your phone, WhatsApp video call, Zoom webinar calls. You can do activities on these video calls, calling them regularly, texting them. The day and age we're living in terms of technology, we've got so many resources that we can use to connect with each other. I know for myself personally, I've been struggling to connect with others online. It's very artificial for me. So I've connected with nature, or I've gone to the park, gone out for a walk, connected with myself, kind of understood myself more. Again, connected with family members. It's really important to connect with others in the household as well. But again, it isn't, I wouldn't say it's 100% safe, but at a socially distant level, it's very safe. Of course, wash your hands when you come home. If you can wear a mask outside, that would be safe as well. So keeping it distant from a social distance, yeah.
We've got another question here saying that the perception, we discussed this in previous sessions as well, about the perception of mental health, but in particular when it comes to well-being. I know you said in the presentation, in Spirited Minds and the work that you do, you've trained up imams. I've not heard, I can't remember an imam using the word well-being in a khutbah before. Is it because there's different language, there is other words that are being used, or is it just a case of this is the current language that's being used, but actually it comes in different forms? I know you're training imams. Are you asking them to use those kind of words, or are you letting them be using the words that they often use? Because language matters. When I'm hearing well-being, I know they're discussing that.
It's interesting because language is really powerful in itself. So when we've trained our imams, we've used mental health specifically. Again, mental health has stigmatized perception attitudes to it. So we want to kind of break down that stigma and reduce that stigma. So if you use taboo words, the taboo won't be as strong. That's how we perceive it. Well-being, again, will probably cater more to the general community and the Muslim community, and they'll probably receive that information more. So our idea is making the taboo untabooed. If you talk about it explicitly, it won't be as big of an issue. So for example, I'm going to use a topic that's taboo, such as domestic violence or sexual abuse. Now, not many people talk about it because it's very taboo. It's got a very heavy emotive, sense to it. So with mental health, we use it as explicit. We use it with that term because it is mental health. And again, mental health, well-being comes under the umbrella of mental health. So it is a word that we can use under mental health, but we use mental health explicitly to destigmatize the stigma around the word mental health.
One of the things that some of our viewers they've asked as well in other sessions, what can I do on a kind of, I know you were saying about, for example, you've gone down to the park. One of the things I know I've done in lockdown is at least try to go for a daily walk, just literally just walking by myself, or where possible, the children are joining me, or the whole family, we're going for a walk, and just literally you just walk. Sometimes you might even talk to somebody while you're walking and socially distance, or you might even call. Often I've used a way to connect with others while I'm walking. I'm just talking to somebody on the phone with somebody that I'm normally not talking to, or I feel like I can talk to. So what kinds of daily, if you want to just give maybe some practical tips on, we've both shared from our own personal experience, a couple of things, but what other things do you think people can do just to kind of, one of the things that the theme from your talk is this idea of calmness, is the idea of not rushing and creating that sense of calm. And how do we do that on a daily basis?
So one of the things that's really important is our routine. And sticking to that routine, because it helps give us that stability of what we expect, and helps regulate our body as well, because our body will notice when there's a change in our routine. So for example, sleep. If our sleep is a bit erratic, or we sleep at one time and wake up at a different time, our body is going to be a bit, what's happening here? It's not regulating itself. So it's important to have a specific time that you go to sleep and a specific time that you wake up. Other routines are like, what do you do when you wake up? Do you do your bed? Do you go to the bathroom, shower, brush your teeth, self-care? And then what do you do next? Kind of scheduling in your self-care day to day, when you eat your meals, what time you wake up, what time you sleep, planning accordingly to what you would normally do. So routine is really important, and sticking to that routine. Of course, during coronavirus, it's been quite difficult because our routine of going to work has stopped. So what are we using that time for? And I feel like there's been quite different experience from different people where they've been so productive, or some people who haven't been really productive at all. And that's okay. Like, we're going through a pandemic right now. It's really okay. You don't have to feel like you need to cram everything in before we start going back to work. So sticking to the usual routine that you would have if you were at work, or if the pandemic wasn't here. Another thing is, pleasurable activities. At least engage in something pleasurable every day. I would say change your environment. Don't stay in your room. Some people are working within their room. Some people are working in their house. Go out to the garden. Go out, even out like across the road or something like that. Get some fresh air. Open your windows. I would always recommend going outside, doing something physically active, doing something different, and doing something pleasurable. Like yourself, I do take daily walks as well. Instead of talking on the phone, I take my journal and I write down what's going through my mind at that time, what was going through my mind yesterday and whatnot, and that helps me process myself a bit better. So there are things. Don't rush yourself to be a certain way, do a certain thing, go with the flow. At the same time, maintain your routine so your body and your mind has a sense of stability and regulation.
On that note, we've come to the end of tonight's episode. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much again, Farhana, for joining us. And all the information are on the slides if you want to get in touch with Farhana or Inspirited Minds. Thanks once again to you and the organization that you have been working with. It's a very, very important area, especially in the coming phase post-coronavirus. Hopefully we can speak in post-corona virus, and the impact that this will have on mental health has been documented by various research that's come out recently. And your work and all of you who are listening out there, getting this message out there is going to be so crucial. So thanks once again for joining, and hopefully, inshallah, you will all join us in the next series. This sadly brings us to the end of this series of spiritual solitude. Inshallah, we will be coming back to you in a month's time with a new series. So watch out for more details. So with us, Sister Farhana and Hussein Shafar, thank you all very much. Take care and keep it calm. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum.